Hey guys, my name's EarthToLydia, not Earth. Please don't call me Earth. Welcome back to part 2 of our speculation video on chapter 17. Today we're about to be discussing some potential licenses from other mediums and a very interesting question that came up on the satisfaction survey lately. But before we get into it, if you don't know, I'm a Dead by Daylight streamer on Twitch and I'm currently in the middle of a partner push, so if any of you would come down and support me over there, that would really mean a lot. I stream at twitch.tv/EarthToLydia, where you can talk directly with me and maybe we can even play a few games together. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you want to see further videos like this, I'd love if you'd consider subscribing. And if you haven't seen the part 1 of this video where we discuss potential movie licensed characters, I'll be linking that below and putting a card on this video too, so you can watch that as well. Anyway, let's get into the speculation. First of all, I'm going to start with the screenshot that we shared at the end of the last video. Some of you may already know that Dead by Daylight recently put out a customer satisfaction survey, something that they do quite regularly to get feedback on features that are already in the game, but we also have a few questions that usually relate to some features that are yet to be added to see how the community would feel about them before they go live. And we had a few questions regarding upcoming licensing in the most recent satisfaction survey. And as you can see from this screenshot, here we had a question asking what different mediums we'd like to see licenses from, which tells us that they have more than just video games and movies in mind. I really think some of the suggestions that they put forward are quite interesting, and it really goes to show that anything could be on the cards. We already have a couple of video game licenses, but they've also suggested anime, manga, comics, books, and real life. The last one I think is very suspicious and quite vague, but I want to address this before anything else. I do not think that the developers are referring to real life serial killers or murderers here. The reason that I say this is because this could be extremely disrespectful to the victims and their families and has such a huge potential to have backlash. Although I do trust the developers to do their research and not misrepresent the victims or the serial killers, there's definitely something just inherently taboo about making money off of real killers and can almost be seen as glorifying what they did and dismissing their victims. Also, we have seen a few video games released based off of real life serial killers in recent years, and safe to say they've been met with a lot of backlash, most of which have just been outright banned upon release. So what else do we have in real life to draw inspiration from for killers and survivors? My interpretation of this is that we could see some folklore, urban legends, or mythological creatures added to the game. Also historical figures. For example, we could see some old kings or emperors. We could even see a mummy or pharaoh killer. I'd personally love to see something like this added into the game because it obviously opens up a whole realm of possibilities that we've not yet broken into. So as for some other mediums, let's go into some franchises that we could potentially see. As with my last video, I want to disclaimer this first and say that I'm not here to give a solid suggestion on who I think the next chapter will be on. I'm here to make suggestions, throw names out there, and give my opinion on whether or not I think it's reasonable, and also whether I'd like to see them in the game. So take what I say with a pinch of salt, make sure to come up with your own theories and suggestions, and do not get your hopes up on any one franchise in particular, because that's a sure way of getting yourself let down if it's not what you want. First of all, let's get into video games. As I'm sure many of you will know, The Last of Us 2 was recently released, and it's been confirmed that there's an HBO series in the making. The Last of Us follows how civilization continues after a zombie apocalypse after the outbreak of a brain-eating fungus with some iconic zombie types known as the Infected. Anyone who's even relatively familiar with this series will most likely know about the clickers. They're the third stage of the fungal infection and are identified by the fungus growing out of their skulls. There's also the bloaters, who are the final infectious stage and covered in a full body fungus. Kind of like clickers but on steroids. I would say they'd make a great addition to the game as they are absolutely terrifying in nature. However, there is one small setback. Both clickers and bloaters are completely blind and locate their prey using echolocation. This might be difficult to translate into the game, though on the other hand, we do have the nurse whose eyes are always covered and she's somehow able to see perfectly fine. So maybe the devs could find a workaround to this. Alternatively, we could see the second stage of infection, known as the stalkers. They're still easily able to see, while still being terrifying zombies. Known for some terrifying bosses as well as its difficulty, the Dark Souls and Bloodborne series focuses on historical events in a fictional realm. Fans of the series will more than likely have their favourite enemies that they'd like to see as an opponent or main in Dead by Daylight, but as we discussed in the last video, the killer would need to be humanoid to fit the character layout that Behaviour have for new chapters. While the Soulsborne series has many horrifying and identifiable bosses, they unfortunately don't fit this criteria. Many of the bosses are gargantuan in size and not often humanoid. There are a few exceptions to the latter, but they'd still have to be scaled down to feature in the game, and I don't think an Iron Golem is quite as intimidating when he's only 6 foot. In a weird way, the Evil Within has a similar kind of tone to that of Silent Hill, as some of the antagonists are manifested partly through the memories of the protagonist, Sebastian Castellanos. The series follows Sebastian, a detective who's called to investigate a massacre that's taken place at Beacon Memorial Hospital. Along the way, we encounter the likes of the Keeper, otherwise known as Boxhead, who wields 2 weapons. The first, and his primary weapon, is an axe-like meat tenderizer, while in the other hand, he wields a sack filled with severed heads and spiked surgical tools, such as orbitoclasts used in lobotomies. With several other worthy contenders in this series, I believe the Evil Within could make for a great addition to the game. Resident Evil is a series that I would absolutely love to see in Dead by Daylight. The series is as alive as ever, with the original games all getting remakes for PC and modern consoles, and Resident Evil 8 Village confirmed as a PlayStation 5 exclusive with a PC release coming in 2021. Resident Evil features a horde of iconic characters known as tyrants who could make impressive and intimidating killers in Dead by Daylight. There's Mr. X, Lisa Trevor, and of course, Nemesis, just to name a few. With all of that said, Capcom released their own asymmetrical online multiplayer game for those who bought the Resident Evil 3 remake. The game is called Resident Evil Resistance and features 4 survivors trying to escape against one mastermind who spawns zombies for the survivors to fight. Though not currently a standalone game, it wasn't released that long ago and is still getting new content released regularly. While this is a chapter I think many people would demand, we can safely assume that no Resident Evil DLC is planned for any time soon. Outlast is a game that has made me feel genuine fear unlike any other horror games I've played before. From start to finish, this game keeps you in a constant state of anxiety over what enemies you're about to meet, whether that's the likes of the bloodthirsty Richard Traeger with his operating equipment, or Frank Manera from Whistleblower, who we first meet when he's slicing someone open, or the sheer monster that is Chris Walker. Chris Walker pursues you throughout the original Outlast, stalking you in tight spaces until you're within reach for him to lift you up off your feet and bring you crashing down into the ground. He is terrifying. As far as maps go, the asylum with its blood-smeared walls and mangled bodies would feel right at home with the like of Leary's Memorial Institute, or even the labyrinth of dimly lit sewers. However, like Resident Evil, Outlast does have a multiplayer game set to be released soon, which might stop us from seeing an Outlast chapter come to Dead by Daylight in the near future. Left 4 Dead is a license that already features in Dead by Daylight, with Bill Overbeck as a survivor, but is one that we could definitely see some development on. As with Resident Evil, there are several different types of the infected, like spitters, jockeys, hunters, and tanks, just to name a few. While all of these have abilities that will be well suited to the entity, none create an atmosphere of genuine horror quite like The Witch. It is possible that we could see a full chapter if Behaviour wanted to bring another Left 4 Dead survivor into the game, and I'm gonna say it right now, I really want to play Rochelle or Zoe. Aside from this, there are so many iconic maps that you can choose from to bring to Dead by Daylight. I really think the potential to add a full Left 4 Dead chapter is there. And of course, as with the last video, Alien isn't only a movie, and it's also not the only horror sci-fi contender out there. We could also potentially see a Dead Space chapter, but I'm not sure how likely this is. Fitting in with all the other teen slasher icons we have in the game, the Until Dawn cast would feel right at home among the likes of Laurie Strode and Quentin Smith. This game does an incredible job of making you feel like you're in a horror movie as you take control of this group of kids on a vacation in the mountains. Unknown to them, their trip is being crashed by flesh-eating Wendigos. Wendigos are not an original concept at Until Dawn, but the way in which they're portrayed in this game, with super fast reflexes and grisly takedowns, is extremely unique and haunting. The map would of course fit right in with Mount Ormond as an old snowy cabin among the mountains. Okay, as we come to a close on the video game segment, I'm about to get onto what appears to be the top of everyone's speculation list for chapter 17, and that is the theory that we're going to be getting a Five Nights at Freddy's chapter with Springtrap as a killer. I just have to say, I seriously do not think that this is likely to happen. Before you go to write your angry comment, please let me explain why. As mentioned in my previous video, there are a lot of different subgenres of horror out there. Let me put it to you like this. Adam Sandler is an actor known for playing the lead goof in romantic comedies. The Notebook is a romance movie. Does that mean that The Notebook would be just as good if they cast Adam Sandler instead of Ryan Gosling? No, it would be inappropriate because that's not the same kind of romance. If you want another comparison that's a little closer to the topic at hand, look at Leprechaun. This is considered a horror comedy series, but could you honestly see Leprechaun in Dead by Daylight actually fitting in with the other killers? The same applies here. I know some people will pick apart this argument, but overall, Dead by Daylight is a game more serious in tone, where its comedy is more tongue-in-cheek and ironic, and works more at suspense building and strategy than it does a quick cheap scare. Is Five Nights at Freddy's fun? Having played the games, yes, they were fun. Do I respect it as a franchise? Yes, but do I think that this makes for an appropriate fit for Dead by Daylight? No, because they're not the same kind of horror. Jump scare horror is undoubtedly one of the cheapest forms of horror out there, and isn't representative of the type of horror licenses that we've seen in Dead by Daylight so far. See? I'm sure that got a couple of you who were watching. And if I can jump scare you with a daisy, does that make the daisy scary? No. Aside from this, there are several flaws to this idea. First of all, it would be difficult to assign a survivor from the Five Nights at Freddy universe that will be recognizable to most of the Dead by Daylight player base, and has more lore than just was a security guard for a pizza joint in a past life. Secondly, I don't know how an animatronic could be added to the game and actually be taken seriously. Yes, I'm aware that Springtrap isn't explicitly an animatronic, but you get where I'm coming from. The death sequences in the Five Nights at Freddy games revolves around the animatronics trying to force you, the survivor, into an animatronic suit. That kind of thing just doesn't translate well to the unique powers that the killers have, and I find it extremely difficult to imagine how this would feel to structure or even just to play this killer. This doesn't mean that I'm hating on Five Nights at Freddy's, it's just not the same kind of horror and it just wouldn't fit. Yes, before someone puts it in the comments, I have seen the interview with somebody that works at Behavior who said that they'd like to see Springtrap added. Let me debunk this right now. The person who suggested this is a UI designer. For those of you who don't understand what that is, they're a user interface designer. This has nothing to do with new licenses. As the name suggests, they design the user interface. A lot of people are using this as concrete evidence that Springtrap is coming into the game. Again, they deal with the interface, not who the character will be. As a counter argument, I'd like to show you this clip which comes directly from one of the gameplay programmer's live streams, and what he had to say when asked whether Springtrap was coming to the game just a couple of weeks ago.
I give 10k biddy if you tell us Springtrap incoming? The fuck is that?
I don't know what the fuck Springtrap is.
This is directly from somebody who literally programs the game himself. You would think if Springtrap was coming to the game, he would at least know what that is. His name is McLean. You can check this for yourself. He posts dad jokes on Twitter and streams Dead by Daylight on Twitch too, so I'd highly recommend. He's good peoples. I would go into Slenderman now and talk about all the reasons why he wouldn't work either, but I'd just be repeating everything that I just said about Springtrap, so let's move on. As much as I'd like to see more of them, horror TV series aren't really that prevalent. Having said that, we do still have a few big series going to this day with the likes of American Horror Story and The Walking Dead. American Horror Story has certainly shown us a decent amount of characters that we could see as Dead by Daylight killers. It might be a little bit difficult to determine the power based on what character would be chosen. While The Walking Dead does have some identifiable killers like Negan, all of them are a little too human to fit in with the Dead by Daylight killers. Can't help but feel like, despite them being a little less innocent in nature, they'd be better suited to survivors, as ultimately all of the humans in the series are just trying to survive. The overarching enemies in the series are obviously the zombies, but they're a little on the weaker side to have anyone in particular stand out as a standalone killer. For this reason, maybe a Walking Dead paragraph would be a little bit more suitable than a full-blown chapter. We do of course already have a couple of TV-inspired additions in the form of Ashley Williams from Ash vs. Evil Dead, as well as a chapter for Stranger Things. Both of these series appear on Netflix, which does make me wonder whether Netflix is their go-to for a new licensed TV series. Alternatively, I think it'd be interesting to see an older series like Angel or Buffy the Vampire Slayer joining the roster, and one of the many supernatural villains that they have under their belts. The next medium mentioned on the survey was books. Obviously, horror novels are something that have stemmed back hundreds of years and predates any modern horror series, as well as spawning some of the most iconic names in horror history. Whether it's Bram Stoker's Dracula or Frankenstein's monster, novels have influenced horror in every other medium in history. So could we see one of these icons coming to Dead by Daylight? Well, maybe a vampire or slow-hulking monster is a little bit too obvious, but how about a Cthulhu monster or a similar creation from H.P. Lovecraft? Lovecraft's novels have a more eerie and gothic tone, which I personally think would fit in incredibly well in the entity. Alternatively, the survey hints that we could see some characters from anime and manga. While this isn't a category that I have too much knowledge on, I've heard quite a few names thrown out there, like that of Tokyo Ghoul for example. If any of you do have suggestions for an anime or manga series that you think would fit in well, please share your ideas. There are plenty more contenders that we could go through, but we could be here for hours if I included everyone. everyone. If you have any other licenses of what you'd like to see in the game, please make sure to leave them in the comments, as I genuinely enjoy hearing what your thoughts are. That is unfortunately all I can go through right now, but hopefully it's provided a little bit more food for thought on future licenses that we could see in the game. If you want to hear more license speculation as we get more evidence and the release date gets closer, be sure to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. As always, if you want to know any of my other social medias, including the link to my Discord server, then they're all linked in the description box below. We're doing a lot more community and movie nights, so feel free to drop in and hang out for one. And thank you again for making it this far into the video. Until next time, bye guys.